They never saw her flame, only the warmth it gave. In a world where noise was worshipped, she lived like a whisper, unnoticed but unforgettable. Her name was never written in lights. No applause followed her footsteps, and yet every room she entered became softer, somehow safer, like a storm had just passed and left peace behind. She was the kind of person who remembered the birthdays no one else did. The one who noticed the tired eyes, the fake smiles, the silence behind the "I'm fine." She made soup for the sick, left fresh bread by lonely doorsteps, and held umbrellas over strangers when rain caught them off guard. But she never asked for anything, not once. Some called her the village widow, though no one knew if she'd ever truly loved or simply lost too much. Her little house stood at the edge of the woods, windows always glowing, even on the coldest nights. Children believed it was magic, that inside lived someone who could fix hearts. Not with spells, but with small kindnesses. She never denied it. Every morning, before the sky turned gold, she lit a single candle in her window. No matter what, no matter the season, the storm, or the sadness in the world, that little flame always danced behind the glass like a promise. People began to watch for it. Farmers on their way to the fields, the baker unlocking his shop, even the drunkard stumbling home before dawn. All of them would glance up just to see if the light still burned. It always did, somehow. Knowing that one small flame kept shining gave people courage. It reminded them that not everything good disappears, that quiet strength still existed in a world that often forgot how to be gentle. But no one asked how she did it, how she kept giving when no one gave back, how she kept loving when the world had only ever taken. No one asked, and she never said, until one winter when the wind came, harder than before, colder, and the candle, the one that had never gone out, began to flicker. And suddenly, everyone noticed. The warmth they had felt, the comfort they'd never questioned, it was all because of her. And now, it was fading. But they were already too late, because even the strongest flame can only fight the wind for so long. The storm didn't ask permission. It came in the dead of night, howling like a wounded animal. Trees bent low, windows rattled, and the sky cracked open with thunder. The village huddled beneath blankets, praying for morning. But one window still glowed, barely. Inside that small wooden house, she stood in her nightdress, shielding the candle with trembling hands. Wax dripped onto her skin, but she didn't flinch. Her eyes were locked on the flame, tiny, fragile, but alive. Outside, snow slammed against the glass like it wanted in, like it wanted to snuff out every last bit of warmth. She didn't move. Her hands shook now, not from fear, but from age. Her back ached, and her breath came in shallow bursts. But the candle needed her. It had always needed her. That flame wasn't just light. It was memory. It was love. It was the soul of every kindness she'd given without thanks. And if she let it die, what would be left? She whispered something to it. A name, maybe. A prayer. Then she reached for her coat. By dawn, the wind had calmed, but the world outside was unrecognizable. White buried every path. Silence hung heavy, the kind that makes even birds forget to sing. The village stirred slowly, groggy and cold, and then they saw it. The candle was gone. For the first time in decades, her window was dark, At first, no one moved. They just stared, confused. Then, someone, maybe the teacher, maybe the shopkeeper, started walking toward the little house. Others followed, quietly, an unspoken worry pulling them like a tide. They found the door unlocked. Inside, it was warm but empty. The fire in the hearth had died down to whispers. Her teacup still sat on the table, steamless. A scarf hung over the chair, untouched. But she wasn't there. The candle was, burned low, barely more than a stub, but still warm to the touch. And next to it, a note, 6 words, written in a hand that shook but never broke. If I go, keep it burning. Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't the cold kind. It was the kind that demanded respect, that made grown men press fingers to trembling lips. She had left, but she had not left them empty. And now they had a choice, to carry the flame or let it die. They stood in her home, frozen, not from cold, but from knowing. She was gone. Not a goodbye, not a footprint in the snow, just gone, like the last leaf falling in autumn, silent, unnoticed, yet changing everything. The note still trembled in the shopkeeper's hand. If I go, keep it burning. Someone whispered, we should light it again. But no one moved. It wasn't fear, it was shame. They remembered how she had always been there, always. When someone lost a parent, she brought soup. When crops failed, she shared bread. When hearts broke, she listened without judgment. She had patched this village together like an old quilt, stitch by invisible stitch. But they had taken it all for granted. Now, that tiny flame, the one they had barely noticed, was asking something of them. Not words, not flowers, just action. A young boy stepped forward. The same boy who used to leave drawings at her door, hoping she'd tape them to her window. His name was Eli. His hands were small, but steady. He struck a match. The candle flickered back to life, and something shifted. The silence broke, not with sound, but with purpose. One by one, the villagers left her home and returned with things she had once given them. A shawl she'd knitted for a widow after her husband died. A jar of preserved cherries from last winter, still unopened. A book she had read aloud to the children when the school roof leaked. They placed them gently around the candle, like offerings. Not out of grief, but out of memory. Gratitude, love. And that night, for the first time, a second candle appeared in a different window. Then a third, then 5, then 12. By the end of the week, almost every home in the village had a candle burning before dawn, not as tradition, but as promise. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. We carry her light now. The candles weren't just flames anymore. They were quiet revolutions. A neighbor shoveled another's path without being asked. A child shared his only coat. A man who hadn't spoken to his brother in years knocked on his door and said, I was wrong. Kindness was spreading, and yet the original flame, her flame, still burned in her window, untouched, watched over, guarded, but not forever, because even the brightest lights must pass into new hands. Winter deepened. The snow no longer surprised them, nor did the cold. What changed was the silence. It became sacred. Every morning, the village would rise before the sun, and one by one, windows would bloom with soft, golden light. It wasn't routine. It was ritual, a silent vow made not with words, but with wax and fire. Still, something felt different. The candle in her window, the first, the original, was growing smaller. Not from neglect. It was still lit each morning by Eli, the boy with the steady hands. But wax has a limit. Even the purest flame must one day reach the bottom. They all saw it. No one said it. But they began to wonder, what happens when the last drop melts? Eli asked the question one cold afternoon, his breath painting clouds in the air. What if we can't keep it burning? The baker paused, his hands dusted with flour. Then we find another way. But his eyes betrayed him. He didn't know how. That evening, the village met in the old church hall, not to mourn, but to decide. Every candle, every act of kindness, every sunrise felt like it was building to something. But no one knew what. Then the teacher, the oldest among them now, stood and said softly, "She didn't light that candle because she was strong. She lit it because the world was weak. She gave us something we didn't know we needed. And now, she's asking us to become it." No one spoke, but slowly, people nodded. The lesson had never been about the flame. It was about what it lit up inside them. Still, the next morning, the candle burned a little lower. The wick trembled. Eli's fingers hesitated when striking the match. It flared, but it struggled, and for the first time, the flame didn't dance. It held still, like it was listening. The village waited. They didn't speak. They just watched the little window at the edge of the woods, the one that had always glowed with quiet courage. And inside that stillness, something began to change. Not the flame, but the people. The silence wasn't silence anymore. It was heartbeat. It was breath. It was 1,000 unspoken promises being made all at once. They would not let the light die, even if they had to become the flame themselves. The wind returned. Not loud this time, not violent, just present. A cold whisper curling through the village like a reminder. It moved through cracks in old doors, between curtains, beneath coats. But it wasn't chasing warmth anymore. It was testing it. And the candle, her candle, had almost nothing left to give. The wax was now just a soft dish around the wick. Every breath of air made the flame shiver. But still, it stood. Eli didn't sleep much those nights. He kept watch from the front room, wrapped in one of her old quilts, his eyes never leaving the window. He didn't know why he was chosen, only that he was. On the third night of the wind, something strange happened. He heard her. Not a ghost, not a dream, just her voice. Gentle, like always, like when she used to hand him warm bread through the fence and say, "You matter, even when you feel small." But this time, the voice only said one thing. "Let it go." He sat up straight. "No," he whispered. But something inside him, the quiet part that knew truth before it made sense, understood. She hadn't meant give up. She meant give it away. The next morning, Eli stood in the center of the village square, holding a small box. Inside it, the last candle she had ever made. There had been 3. She had told him once, without saying why. One she burned, one she gave, one she saved. He held the saved one now. "I can't keep it," he said. "We all must." The silence that followed was thick with emotion. No one wanted to lose that light. But deeper than the fear was knowing it didn't belong to one window anymore. It belonged to all of them. So they made a choice. Every home took a turn. One night, one flame, passed from house to house, family to family, and with it, Stories of her, of how she'd helped, healed, listened, loved. And somehow, the more they shared the flame, the stronger it grew. Not brighter, not hotter, just deeper. They started calling it the long light, because it had outlived storms, outlived silence, outlived the woman who carried it first. But even the long light was fading, and they knew they had one final night, one last chance to decide, will the flame die, or will they carry it, not in wax, but in who they choose to become? The final night came. No one slept. They gathered where it all began, the small wooden house at the edge of the woods. The candle sat in the center, its flame now a thin thread of gold, swaying softly. It didn't flicker in fear. It rested, like it had done its part, like it knew the weight it once carried was no longer its alone. Eli stood beside it. He had grown in the weeks since, not taller, not older, just wiser. The kind of growth only loss can give, and only love can guide. He held the final match in his pocket, untouched. They had all agreed, when the candle burned out, it would not be relit, not because it didn't matter, but because it had already lit what it came to light. He looked around the room. The baker who now fed 3 hungry mouths each morning, no charge. The teacher who opened her home to orphaned children. The old man who forgave his son after 10 years of silence. All of them, flames in human form. And outside, beyond the windows, candles still lined the village streets. In every home, in every heart, her light remained. But the one before them, the original, danced slower now, lower. A soft breath might have ended it, but no one breathed. They simply watched and remembered, not just her, but how she had lived, without applause, without asking, just giving, quietly, constantly, like a candle in the wind. Suddenly, the flame flared. One last burst of light, warm and wild, as if it was saying goodbye. Then it was gone. Smoke curled upward. No one cried, because in that moment, they understood. She hadn't vanished. She had multiplied. Her light now lived in the boy who stayed up to protect a flame, in the woman who forgave a grudge, in the stranger who knocked on an old door and asked, "Do you need anything?" They stood in silence, but it wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Because when a true light goes out, it doesn't leave darkness. It leaves direction. There was no mourning, only meaning. The day after the flame went out, something strange happened. The village didn't feel darker. It felt brighter, not in light, but in spirit. People walked slower. They looked each other in the eyes. They listened when someone said, "I'm fine," and gently asked again, "Are you really?" The wind still came, but it didn't scare them anymore, because they had learned something no storm could take. That true strength is not loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't ask to be seen. It simply shows up, over and over. Like she did, no one built a statue. No plaque was hung. Instead, they started something better. Every child, when old enough, was taught the story of the flame, not as history, but as inheritance. And every year, on the coldest night, they gathered in the square. No decorations, no speeches, just candles, hundreds of them, each lit not from a match, but from one another, one flame to the next, until the whole village glowed. Eli, now older, would tell the children. She never asked for anything. She just gave. And the world became better. Not louder, not richer, just kinder. And then he would smile. "You are the candle now." And they believed him, because they could feel it, that quiet fire tucked inside their ribs, that whisper of courage, asking them to do good even when no one's looking, to help, to heal, to be someone's warmth in a cold world. The original flame was gone, but her light had never been brighter. It moved through every helping hand, every forgiving heart, every soul who chose love over pride, hope over fear, kindness over comfort. Because a candle in the wind can flicker, it can bend, it can even disappear. But what it gives, what it awakens, that lives on. So if you're listening now and there's a part of you that feels small, unseen, tired, remember this. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be someone's light, even for a moment, because that moment can become everything. You don't have to burn forever. You just have to burn true. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a little light today. Don't forget to subscribe to English Chapter for more powerful stories that help you grow in English and in life. Your journey is just beginning.